Good morning, everybody. It's Jane Johnston with the Bar Hill Group at Remax Camosun. I'm here on the Victoria Real Estate Show with...
Hey, everybody. It's Andrew Plank here with the Vibe Real Estate Group and Royal LePage. And Jane, you are not here in Victoria. You are where?
I'm in Tirana.
I'm outing you.
Here, I'll show you where I am. I'm just away for a few days. I'm visiting family, and this is the view.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's introduce Bev, too.
Okay. Bev, do you mind being on the internet?
No, not at all.
Hi, Bev.
So she's watching us to see how we're doing the show and learning all about technology.
So good times.
Alrighty. So, how's your week been?
Pretty good. Pretty good. It's a little slower out there. I've been saying that for a few weeks, but it feels definitely slower. Phone calls are happening less. It's getting darker. It's getting wetter, and yeah, the showing activity is just a little bit. It seems like it's down. How are you finding it?
So we listed a property on Johnson, 845 Johnson. The other prices in the building were around 420, and we noticed that the one last sale was actually at 400. So we listed ours at 399, and we've got an accepted offer.
Okay.
So I think it's all about pricing right now.
It's definitely about pricing. The challenge, I think, for a lot of sellers is they're remembering what their assessed values are, which are generally higher than what we're seeing places selling for these days. They're remembering what properties were selling for. Their neighbor sold for it up the road just 6 months ago, a year ago. And it's hard for some people to get their head around the fact that they're going to get less than they could have if they'd sold before. Exactly. And especially if they just recently purchased.
Exactly. And I often think when the assessments come out and they're high, like they were this past year, I wonder about whether or not they're doing anybody a favor, because I think they set up false expectations for.
Yeah, that it's not about doing a favor. It's just based on what values were at that time. And the thing people don't understand, the thing that a lot of people don't understand about assessed values is that they are based on a fixed point in time, and they're looking at, even though they come out, 6 months later, they're based on a time 6 months in the past. And they're sort of like this, taking a pin and marking it right there. So,
yeah. So right now they're at least 14 months to 16 months out and off. But what people are doing is they look at, they go, well, as if we look at list versus assessed and sold versus assessed, this is what we should be getting. And I'm like, well, let's look at what else is sold.
Yeah, let's look at what is actually selling right this very minute. And that's the thing, folks, that markets can shift and change, but you want to look at the overall trends and where things are going, and if anything, get ahead of them if it's looking like it's going against you.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's go over today's stats.
Okay.
So it is October 19th, and we're looking at short-term rentals and are they being abolished? We're going to discuss all the facts and figures that the government's put out. And of course, because it was probably done last minute, there's some loopholes I'm seeing in here, some definitions we're not entirely sure of. And anyway,
I just want to point out that Jane is in charge of subtitles and spelling.
What did I make a mistake of?
Spelling, did he say?
It'll come. Nope. Okay, never mind. We'll talk about it later.
Okay. So go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, so as of October 19th, which is today, Thursday, October 19th, in the last 7 days, we had 239 new listings went live to the MLS in Victoria. 155 properties went pending out of the available properties on market. There were 156 decreases in price. This is more properties are decreasing in price than went pending. It's interesting to see that number. Price increases for back on markets 3, sold 129. 61 properties expired unsold. 9 properties withdrawn because people changed their plan
Yes, but compared to last week, we're
Mhm.
way up in sales. So 155 compared to 91. So that's excellent in my mind.
True.
And the number of listings has come down. I think overall, though, our listings are still increasing. So that's good. And yeah, I'm thinking maybe all those price decreases are actually starting to stimulate sales.
Oh, yeah.
I've definitely, buyers are definitely looking as long as they can find the right price point.
Yeah. Okay, so to date this month, this is as of Monday, because that's when the stat comes out. We have 183 net unconditional sales. That's compared to 118 for last week, month to date. And new listings were at 529. That's compared to 998 for October of 2022 and up from 336 last week.
Mhm.
And our total listings are at 2,708, and that's up from 2,678 for last week, but way up from last October in 2022 at 2,192. So
Yep.
we're up about 25%.
So it's
year.
possible we could be seeing an inventory of around 3,000 by early January. Over 3,000.
Yeah. So I was thinking about that. I mean, we're going to naturally go into a dip here over the next few months, and
Mhm.
December is typically our lowest. So it'd be interesting to see how low it actually gets.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so let's just talk about short-term rentals. So the government, in its wisdom, has decided that this is what's on its website, that it is affecting, I think there were 16,000 short-term rentals in British Columbia, and I'm assuming that they're gathering that data from different sites like Airbnb and VRBO and all that. And so they've now defined short-term rentals. Typically in the past, they've been less than 30 days. Now we're seeing them less than 90 days consecutive.
They're helping to define short-term rentals, which is helpful because they recently came out with legislation that didn't that allowed for strata buildings who had blanket rental restrictions were now allowed to rent, and in fact almost forced to rent. They dismantled that ability to have that rental restriction. But the question came in is what is a rental versus what is a short-term rental, because you can still disallow short-term rentals in your building.
In a regular, if you're under 55, over 55, you can allow a rule, you can have a bylaw of absolutely no rentals. Under 55, you had to define what it would be. Yes. No short-term rentals, what a short-term rental was. So typically it was 30 days because it was considered transient accommodation. And now they've moved it up to 90 consecutive days.
So any rental less than 90 days is considered short-term, and it is actually now expressly forbidden.
Yeah, they're saying they're found generally in residential or resort areas.
Mhm.
Is there another type of area?
Commercial areas, but that's where the hotel zoning and stuff allows for it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when they're talking residential, maybe they're talking more about single-family homes versus condos, but they're not, because it's all under the same brush here.
Which actually brings to head a really good point. So right now in Victoria, there are specifically short-term rental buildings, condo
Yes.
buildings.
Yeah, but this is the thing. So folks, the government is trying to make more housing for people under a regular, more traditional form of access, like with a regular rental agreement. So they're trying to clean up and get rid of the short-term rentals that are taking up that housing space. And now we should say that this legislation has just been announced. It still needs royal assent. So it's not a done deal yet, but it's looking like this is the lay of the land. This is where things are going.
Yeah. Okay, so I've put a link in the comments if anybody wants to look at it. So where they're looking. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
Jane, just to go back to what you were just saying and what this is. I mean, the reason this is big news really for a lot of folks, especially I think in Victoria, is, and to go into a bit of history here, but we did have downtown Victoria had zoning for transient zoning at one point. And there were a lot of buildings that were specifically built like that. You know, the Janyan is a great example, which has got a lot of micro units, and the short-term zoning allowed for people to buy those units and not planning to live in them, but just planning to use them as a short-term rental income-producing vehicle, and it has worked for people for many years. Mermaid's Wharf, there's a lot of buildings downtown that are just have traditionally been short-term rental and primarily short-term rental. But then the city of Victoria, in order to give more housing stock, rezoned and got rid of that zoning. But there's a rule around what's it called? Legal non-conforming, where if something's been of a certain use for and was being used legally for that use, and then the zoning has changed, you can continue to use the space for that zoning. So that's what's been happening downtown. You're looking quizzical, but that's what's been happening downtown with all these short-term rentals, and people are still buying and selling condos in those buildings that are still falling under that legal non-conforming usage and renting them out as an income vehicle, a short-term rental. And now the province has pulled that even further back and said, no, that's not even going to be allowed. We're going to nerf that legal non-conforming use. And so now all of those condos downtown, as far as I can see, are going to be no longer available and subject to heavy fines if they're used for short-term rental. So there's a lot of people who are going to be financially damaged by this.
Well, they are giving municipalities, I believe, the option to opt in or not opt in. So it depends.
Do you
They
think
are
City of Victoria is going to?
no, but I mean, okay, so let's just be specific here. Short-term rentals typically here are in downtown Victoria, and they are within maybe 15 buildings, 15 to 20 buildings downtown. They're typically historical buildings that have been stratified. I think the Janyan used to be a hotel, purpose-built hotel. So what they're saying is they're giving municipalities the teeth if they want to do something with the population of over 10,000. If they want to do something and impose these rules, then what's going to happen is if people don't abide by them, they're going to be fined. The fine used to be $2,000, which wasn't very onerous. It's going to increase to a maximum of $50,000.
Major.
And municipalities may require to get a business, require the owners to get a business license. So they may still allow, I'm saying the municipality, allow these short-term rentals, but they have to be in your house, either as a part of your house or as a secondary suite. It's not like you can have 100% short-term rental.
You can't own a building and then rent it out as a short-term rental. You have to, if you live in your home, you can either go away on vacation and rent it out short-term while you're there, assuming it meets other requirements in city bylaws or whatever it is, or you can rent your secondary suite or rent your secondary suite. But again, there's so many levels of government that this needs to fit into. Folks, check your local rules as well as what this is all about.
The other thing is some people purchase these homes based on business plans of having short-term rental. And it's interesting. I did a study and I was looking at strata hotels like the Oswego and Parkside. And then I looked at regular rentals, so a year-long lease. And then I also looked at short-term Airbnb type rentals, and I looked at the ROI on all of them. There actually wasn't that much of a difference depending on what you were purchasing, because the cost of running an Airbnb are quite expensive. Like you're paying the hosting charges. You're
You
also
have economies of scale when you're in a purpose-built hotel strata.
Pardon?
What about Uber?
Uber?
Yes.
They're not in rentals. They're more in transportation.
Oh,
But that's kind of a, I mean, Airbnb is like the Uber of hotels.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Um,
see.
Yeah.
yeah.
So the other thing that's interesting is that they're going to have a short-term rental registry. And we own it's commercially zoned condo on Shawnigan. So I'm just wondering how that all is going to pan out now. They do say that there are certain areas that are going to be
Exempted.
exempt. And I think it's probably the same areas that are exempt from other taxes.
They call it the, what is it, 14 resort communities, and is it 14? All the resort communities are exempted, communities under 10,000, unless you're adjacent to a larger community. So for example, we're made up of 13 municipalities here in Greater Victoria. And if one of those municipalities has under 10,000, let's say Willis Point, perhaps, it would probably still be considered part of the Greater Victoria and not, Willis Point's a district, not a municipality.
Yeah,
But anyway,
I'm seeing Shawnigan Lake's not on that. So, phew.
on the list. Yeah.
But
So there's a lot of questions still to be answered here. And it's what's interesting is, there is, once again, a lot more provincial oversight coming in. As we can see here, there's this provincial compliance and enforcement unit coming into place. The police state is really coming together.
we're becoming very right wing here. But anyway, but it's okay. I mean, I think what they want to do is give people a place to stay. I mean, I think this is coming from, in my perspective, I've had people who have been moving here for work and they haven't found a place to live. So they had to leave because they haven't been able to actually exist here. So there's that. And there's also, I think, looking at the psychology of, or the personality of a building. So if you're allowing a lot of short-term rentals, you're not having a lot of people living in the building, caring about the building.
I think the fundamental message, though, that I've been hearing from, and that I'm seeing too, and that I believe this, is that the fundamental problem is around housing stock, and it's not around necessarily, like, this is a drop in the bucket compared to the problem we have with limited housing stock. And furthermore, there's always knock-on effects when you do things like this. We had, I forget the gentleman's name, but we had an interview here on our show with someone who has, what's his name? He had a company and he does the short term.
Yeah.
What's the name of his company again?
I can't remember. Yeah.
It's a short-term rental company. He deals with a lot of businesses. He helps manage short-term rentals for folks. We'll put the name in the chat if we can remember it. If he's watching, he can chime in. But his business is going to be impacted by this dramatically. But not only his business, companies who are wanting to bring their workers here to Victoria and don't, they're not going to be doing long-term rentals. We already have a shortage of workers in Victoria, and so there are companies who will rent out an entire house for short term for their employees, so that their employees can come here and do business. So that's obviously going to be impacted. I wonder about the tourism industry, as it's going to put more. I mean, the hotels are going to be very happy because this is going to move everyone who's been, coming to Victoria out of these little quaint, fun, short-term Airbnbs back to hotels. Do they have the capacity for this? I just don't know that I fully agree with this very broad strokes, immediate plan, especially one that really impacts, I think, a lot of people who have bought. And this isn't, hey, this is sometimes, people say, oh, we can't, we need housing stock, and landowners and landlords are the equal ones, but they're not. These are people who have been trying to make their way in the world and have saved and scrimped to be able to buy and afford. Sometimes people buy before their first home an investment property like this. Even it's not unheard of. And there's a story right now about a gentleman who just recently bought 6 months ago, is going to be having to sell if he has to sell his condo that he bought purposely for short-term rentals. It's a Friends themed condo, and there's an article in the paper about it. He's lost $150,000 in value right off the top of it. If this has to go back to a regular rental, because the income is very different. And so value of a place is based on
Potential income.
your potential income. So I'll get off the soapbox, but there's a lot of things to consider, and I don't know that it was fully thought through.
Well, he's going to have to go for minimum 3 months rentals. That's what this is saying. He's going to have to get a business license. This isn't entirely different than what's going on already. Like I had a client who owns a house in Fairfield. They were asked by Victoria to get a business license for short-term rental. They were licensed. The homeowner spent $40,000 getting their suite ready for short-term rentals, and then the next year they just canceled it.
The ability to do short-term rentals, yeah.
And they said you should be running this as a suite, not a short-term rental.
Not a
She's like,
business.
there's no kitchen. This is
Yeah.
an Airbnb.
Yeah.
And there was no room for kitchen. It was just
That
a
leads-
resident basement.
That leads me to, I think I can solve everyone's problems here. Here's my proposal. I remember back in the day when I was looking for commercial rental space for my business, the camera shop, and seeing so many office spaces and such that would have made great housing for people. And there's a lot of empty spaces, especially as economies sort of shift and change. There's a lot of spaces in the commercial zoned areas that are just empty and are not being used for housing. And why not look at that as an option as well? Because I think that opens up, especially even for Airbnb, because some of these may not have a kitchen, but they could definitely be converted to something that might still be usable for that kind of income, or converted to actual housing stock.
The other thing somebody mentioned was because during COVID, the city of Victoria took over a lot of hotels.
Yeah.
The kind of low income hotels. Now we're going to have an issue there. So we don't actually have the hotel beds to handle the accommodation. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
It's that knockoff effect. So that article I mentioned with the gentleman who had bought the Friends themed Airbnb has already had to lay off staff in anticipation of this coming down the pipes. So there is definitely going to be incomes and people's livelihoods affected. And so just like you say, there's, people's jobs are affected by this as well. There's a whole industry around the short-term rentals that is going to be built.
Yeah. And also for us, they're very handy for realtors and their clients because
Yes.
People often need a place to stay in between two houses.
All the time we have people in our different user groups that we're participating in. Our colleagues are posting, hey, we've just sold our client's house. You need a place to stay for 2 weeks in the interim before they get into their new place. Does anybody have a short-term space for them? So, and again, hotel is an option, but not if they're all chock-a-block full.
Yeah. It's going to be seasonal. Maybe our sales are going to start happening in the winter and not in the summer. When we have hotel space. Okay, so let's just go back here to I think we have basically attacked every angle of the subject. Tell me about your real estate needs and wants. Andrew, are you still looking for a house for your client up to $2 million in Victoria?
Yes, we're still looking. We've been watching for the hot sheets. We've seen a couple of options, but nothing's really been hitting it out of the park yet. So we're still looking there. Got a great call recently from an old client, and they're ready to buy an investment property. So
hopefully it's not a rental.
Not a short-term rental, home with a suite somewhere in Greater Victoria. So excluding the peninsula, but from the core out to the West Shore.
Well, if they get a suite,
I would say comfortably.
If they get a suite in it, they can rent it if they get a business license.
Anyway, that's not what they're looking for. Just regular, good old investment property. 2 or more suites, a good size, a good quality, good size yard. These are things we're looking for. So we're on the lookout, and that's kind of there's a lot of others people in my list here, but most of that stuff is pretty cut and dry.
Okay, so we have a new listing on Southgate that just came up. It is a 2-bedroom. Let me just get it up here. 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,155 square feet, and that just was listed at $635. So right in Fairfield West there, beautiful condo. It's all renovated, ready to go. It does have shared laundry. And then the other one, 4562 Rithitwood, we did have an offer on that, and that just collapsed. So there were some issues regarding accessibility. There is a sloping driveway there, and it also has stairs to get into the house.
Mm-hmm.
And just the cost of some of the renovations that the buyer wanted to do just wasn't working out. So if anybody's interested, that is vacant, so you can just page and go. And yeah, that's about it. I do still have somebody looking for a house with potential for secondary accommodation for in-laws in Machosen is the preferred area. So we want something with a bit of privacy and a bit of a flat lot. We've seen everything out there. All right. So that's about it for now. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I think your clients should come to Esquimalt because I've got 2 listings right now that have suites downstairs. One is just a complete walk-in, full height. Both are full height basements. Good separation, but you know, Chosen's nice and all, but bring them to Esquimalt.
They want acreage.
Okay.
But thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So everybody, just a reminder, we are on every Thursday morning at 9:30. If you're willing to join us, we'd love to have you. Please post some topics that you'd like for us to cover. Or if you want to be a guest, we welcome other people in the real estate industry and service providers. We'd love to talk to you about what you say and do. Andrew, how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, please reach out. I'm at 250-360-6106. Emails info@andrewplank.com and the website andrewplank.com.
And he's on Instagram, Plank Andrew.
On the gram. Yeah,
On the gram. And if you want to reach me, my name is Jane Johnston. I'm with the Briar Hill Group at Remax Camosun. My number is 250-744-0775. You can reach me at briarhillgroup@gmail.com. And my website's briarhillgroup.com. You can also watch these shows and more at victoriarealestateshow.com. And don't forget to follow my life at realtyteacher_remax_Victoria. All right. So we'll see you next Thursday. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jane. All right. We'll see you.
Tuning out from Toronto. See you later. Have a great week.
Bye. And bye, Bev.
Bye-bye.